Okay.
4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. Federico Tenga. How are you, man? Thanks for
I'm
doing
good.
this.
Great. So thank you for inviting me.
Really appreciate it. I was checking on Twitter. Is Blockstream now broadcasting from satellite? Looks like from
Oh
each
yeah.
region 24/7 for free.
Yeah.
And if you have a full node, you can connect to. Looks like. Have you tried?
Yeah. I haven't tried yet because I don't have a satellite dish and all the stuff that is needed, and my full node is working fine also without it. But yeah, they already launched the service last year. I think it was August 2017, but at the time it was only covering North America, Europe, and part of Africa, I believe. But now they also cover Asia and Oceania, also, I think. So it's much more relevant. Also, because I think this kind of service is more interesting for countries like China, where they have a lot of miners, but there is a risk of possible censorship in the future. So yeah, I think it's a great service to have, and it's good for network resilience in general.
Yeah, it looks like we're living very interesting times for Bitcoins. Also, a couple of subjects I want to bring on, and then we can discuss as we go through the questions. But I have seen recently, in the last year or so, some banning in the usual social media platform.
Yeah.
And I guess might or might not be for the United States, probably is related to the 2020 elections coming up. But what is interesting now is that a lot of funding platforms start to do banning as well, such as Patreon, GoFundMe, etc. And I see many alternative media personalities now that have been banned start displaying their Bitcoin address, start discussing more using Bitcoin as a way to fund their activities and and social media presence. And so it seems like ultimately when Patreon, GoFundMe, and lastly PayPal close on them, it seems like we might see an exodus of these people start acquiring Bitcoin as a form of payment. I think it's going to play favorably for Bitcoin if people know how to use it. I see a lot of comments from some of these followers saying, "I would love to, to fund your activity, but I don't know how to use Bitcoin." So I find it very interesting there. What's your take?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think this is totally good for Bitcoin value proposition because Bitcoin, at least today, is good mostly for two things: for store of value. So if you want to store your wealth in something that is not subject to inflation and that cannot be confiscated by a government, and for censorship-resistant transactions. So if we have more people that need Bitcoin for either of one of these two use cases, so in this case for people that can be subject to censorship, and then we increase the number of pool of people that represent this intolerant minority that can only use Bitcoin because they have no alternative. They cannot use, they don't use Bitcoin just because it's cool. They want to pay the bill with Bitcoin and feel a little bit cyberpunk. They do it because they have no alternative. And the bigger this intolerant minority is, the closer we are to mass adoption, because when this intolerant minority is big enough, then also other people that really don't care about Bitcoin, that can use both Bitcoin or traditional financial services, then they start to adopt Bitcoin because if they use Bitcoin, they can reach 100% of the population. If they use, because everybody can use Bitcoin, but some people cannot use traditional financial systems. Some people are banned from PayPal. So if you only interact with traditional financial services like PayPal, then you don't reach this minority that if it's big enough, is not something you can ignore. So yeah, I think it's great to have more people that actually need Bitcoin for Bitcoin to grow. And I mean, it's not good that people get censored, but for the growth of the Bitcoin ecosystem, I think it's very healthy.
Yeah, and as I say, a lot of people have been asking questions about how Bitcoin works, and I think that's very positive because, as people start to ask questions instead of receiving information passively, they start thinking, how might apply to their situation and how they can use Bitcoin. So I think that's very positive.
Yeah.
On the other front, it's very interesting what's happening with sidechain. Specifically with federated pegs and the possible integration with the traditional finance. I met recently Mario Gibney from Blockstream. Last Wednesday, we have a London Bitcoin Dev meetup, which is organized by Mike Foxon here in London. It was very, very interesting, the work they're doing there at Blockstream. So I'm excited to talk about that with you, your thoughts about the evolution of Bitcoin in the next year or so. I haven't seen these two phenomena kind of playing out. But before we get to that, let me first talk a few minutes of what we're doing here in London, and then maybe you tell us a little bit about how you started with Bitcoin and the work you guys are doing at Chainside.
Sure.
Does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, so Bitcoin and blockchain London, for the people who are new to it, started in September of last year, 2017. We have 2 or 3 members when we first start. We're now at 930 members, growing steadily month after month. Everything started, as I noted, that in London, which is a major financial hub, it was kind of insane to see that it was lacking a proper Bitcoin community at the same level that we have in Germany with the Fulmo guys, or in San Francisco, or in Milan with Giacomo. So I thought to start that just to have a Bitcoin community. And unfortunately, it was not at the time prevalent, mainly because there's a lot of altcoin and shitcoin private blockchain conferences that are kind of dominating the space. And we spoke at the interview with Giacomo. Why is that? It's probably because the fintech community is very strong in London. But in any case, I noted the gap of the lack of Bitcoin community, and also I noted the gap of knowledge between everyday people versus Bitcoiners. And I noticed that gap was quite large. So for people trying to enter, normal people, non-technical people trying to enter the space, it seems to have too large of a gap to fill. So at first, I tried some passive classes, boring people about Bitcoin protocol and technical topics that they were not familiar with. So it was kind of boring at the beginning. So I decided to move the Bitcoin London class into a debate format, and people start to be very much engaged, very interested to that. And I start to include in the debate format some of the explanation of how the protocol works in very simple terms. And I see people react differently, because now they have to think critically about my argument and try to present a counter argument. And by doing that, they start to raise themselves some questions about how the Bitcoin protocol works, how mining works, how open blockchains works, and that started to grow up very quickly. And I see people much more engaged. They start to learn also about the economics, the importance of scarcity, of sound money, hard money versus soft money, and think that everyday people, non-technical people, are generally not familiar with. So it started to grow in popularity, and I decided to expand that instead of being constrained just to London, to open the BitKnow channel so that people can interact with with Bitcoiners such as you or Giacomo, and we're gonna have other people on the channel. And also, in addition to that, I'm planning to start a Bitcoin starting guide, basically for people that haven't even downloaded a Bitcoin wallet. They don't know how Bitcoin wallet works. I recently saw on Twitter people asking, whether an address was a Bitcoin wallet. So very basic questions that people need to know. And there is some available videos out there, but nothing like a guide, a course for people to go from downloading a Bitcoin wallet all the way to understanding more technical concept. So I started that. So to wrap it up, For people that are in London, right below there is the link to the meetup. Just join the meetup if you're in London. We're gonna have once every 2 weeks or so. And if you're not in London, you can follow me on BitKnow channel, and you can subscribe right below. So going back to us, very excited to hear of a strong Bitcoin presence in Italy. So I looked a little bit about your background, Federico. BA in economics, University of Turin, MSc in business administration, City University of London, European Business School, and then you start working, I think, with Giacomo at BHP Network, and now you're CEO and co-founder at Chainside. So just walk us through, your experience, how you got into Bitcoin, when you first heard about Bitcoin, and why have you decided to work in the space?
Yeah, right. So the first time I heard about Bitcoin was some time ago. I think it was about 2011 or something like that. But I wasn't it was interesting, but I didn't have the motivation to go really to go down the rabbit hole. So yeah, it was something cool, something like a cool thing to know about, but not really my new passion. But then, like after some time, I think it was 2 years later, something, I heard about Bitcoin again in the news. So I was like, okay, so this is getting it's something serious. So something worth to learn a little bit more about it. I think it was like 2013 or something. And then yeah, I got passionate about it. First about the monetary aspects. So it was like, yeah, this thing cannot be inflated. There is, it can be inflated, but it's deterministic. So there is a fixed limit. And there is not possible to censor it, so it's resistant to all kind of government attacks. So it sounds like a very good form of money. So I started to get more interested in that. And then I started to try to understand also the technical part. And at the time, my technical background was very poor. So at the beginning, even if I was very interested, it was not that easy. But then, like after some time, I keep reading stuff and trying to talk with people that already knew a little bit more about the Bitcoin. And over time, I started to get passionate also about the technical aspect of Bitcoin, not only the monetary parts. Then
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. Then I started to try to do some little research, some little project about Bitcoin. So yeah, I was starting with the small things. So I was selling Bitcoin on local Bitcoins, so getting some margin. It was like the first way I started to earn something from Bitcoin that was not trading. Then started to be more engaged with the community in Italy. Then I also, when I traveled abroad, I started always to get engaged with the community of the places where I was going. So I spent some time in Philippines, and I started to get engaged with the community in Manila. Then I spent almost 1 year in London, and I tried to get involved in the community in London, but at the time was 2015, so when Ethereum just started, so there was already a lot of hype about Ethereum, and Bitcoin was already kind of fading away from the scene. But yeah, at the time I wasn't so maximalist, so I was open to other altcoins, so it was okay. And then yeah, eventually I funded Chainside with some friends, and which is that our goal was to try to help merchants in Italy to accept Bitcoin payments in a more simple way, because most merchants are not going to set up a node or to interact directly with the Bitcoin blockchain, so they need some kind of abstraction to make it simple. And that's the service we are providing, and yeah, maybe there is not a lot of demand yet for Bitcoin payments right now, because we're still a very early stage, even if Bitcoin is 10 years old. But it's good to start building the technological infrastructure. So when there is more demand for Bitcoin payments, like what is happening right now in the US, the infrastructure is already there, so we can have like a quick grow of users in a short time.
So it seems that you haven't realized right away that it was something that it would have had a significant impact. It took some time. When do you feel that? When did you realize that that was something so relevant to you, so important? What was there was like a moment, or it kind of grow into you, and you kind of got lost into the black hole type of thing?
No, yeah, I think it was more gradual. So there wasn't like, because at the beginning was mostly an hobby, something I was very interested about. But there was also the thing that the price was growing, so it became like very relevant under a financial perspective. So for me, so it kind of gave me more motivation to go more in depth into that. And yeah, so it was very, there was not like a single moment. It was like very gradual. The interest growth over time. So until it became my full-time work.
I see. And then at some point you decided to work in the space, like as you start like trying different things, and eventually the price went up, and then from that point you start to be more interested, right?
Yeah, I started to catch some opportunities, and eventually those opportunities became became my job.
Okay. What was the most difficult concept? Like, I have some people, like probably some of the viewers will be people that just start to learn about Bitcoin, and I'm gonna give my 2 cents when I will do the first starting guide video. But for you, what was the most difficult concept to grasp when you first approached Bitcoin? Was the economic side? Was the technical, the protocol side? Was the incentive system? Or something else? What would you think was the most challenging aspect of Bitcoin for
For
you?
sure was the technical side, because I didn't have a technical background at the time. But the thing is that at the time, it's not that I felt that I wasn't understanding Bitcoin because I lacked of computer science knowledge. It's just that I thought I understood Bitcoin even if it wasn't true. So I think that's the feeling that many people unfortunately have, that you feel that you know enough just because you didn't go deep into the text to see how many things you still don't know, don't understand. So I always had the feeling that I had a pretty good understanding of Bitcoin, but then I learned something new and something new, something new. And if I look back, I knew pretty much nothing at the time. But during all the journey, I always had this feeling that I had a good understanding, and maybe like also in 5 years from now, looking back at this moment, I will think, oh yeah, in 2018 I didn't understand anything. Now I understand much more. So.
Yeah, I feel from my perspective that you start, and the beginning there's a lot of curiosity, and you're kind of no matter where you're coming from, you're sort of empty. You don't have much in the specific topic, in like how Bitcoin works. Maybe you have some security background, so you might have some few advantages there. But in general, you kind of start blank, and you start building as you go. So I also tell to people that just start to get into it, you will never know everything. Like, there's always one aspect that you will hear from somebody, and will caught you off guard, that you were not aware of, or you haven't explored, because it's so vast and it's growing every day, that it's very difficult just to keep up with what is happening. Forget about being an expert on everything. So people that just started, even if they're not technical, even just the economic side of it, there is so much to discuss just there. And for people that are good in security, the security is like a black hole. So I think when people starting, there is no really like a background that will help you go faster into the process. You just build on your curiosity and keep growing from there.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
people that have a solid computer science background, it's easier for them. But because maybe it's easier for somebody with a computer science background to learn about the economics rather than the other way around. But still, this doesn't mean that if you have a computer science background, you automatically understand well Bitcoin, because I've seen many people that had this kind of technical background but never did the effort to actually try to understand better the incentives and the economic, and so they end up like be passionate about some altcoins or some like blockchain system and stuff like that. So I think the computer science background is an advantage, but still is alone is not enough.
Yeah, I also feel that some people might contribute even though they don't fully understand or even or write code to expand Bitcoin itself. Just the understanding of it and the possible applications, and maybe writing idea for new applications on top of Bitcoin might be sufficient to do something very interesting on Bitcoin. And of course, you will need to have developer support at some point, but just understanding the basics could give you the opportunity to participate, I feel. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like if you want to participate, there are many ways. You just like also stuff like education, like what you're doing, are very very important. Or also just being a users that actually use Bitcoin, it's something that makes the ecosystem grow. So you don't need to write code to give some contribution. Like many other things can be done. So you don't have to feel like you're useless if you cannot like write code. Also because people that also among the people that can write code, very few have the skills to actually have an impact, because the level is so high that very few people that are like good enough to have an impact with their coding skills. So like in general, there are many things that you can do, and many different skills that are useful for the ecosystem in general.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. So just again, for people that are new to Bitcoin entering the space, in your opinion, what is the Bitcoin primary use case? We have seen different people having different view for Bitcoin. I think Nick Carter actually wrote an article about that. Like some people see Bitcoin as digital gold as a store of value. Some other digital cash, also thanks to the on-chain or layer 2 solutions that are building on top of Bitcoin. Some people look at it as a reserve currency, other censorship resistance money, as we just spoke a few minutes ago. What's your take? What do you think, from your perspective, is the main use case for Bitcoin right now?
Yeah, well, right now probably the main use case is a store of value. So either store of value or investment. So people put money in Bitcoin because it's a good place to keep your wealth. So myself, I keep most of my wealth in Bitcoin, not just because I think the price will go high, will be higher in the future. Like even if I was sure that the price will not grow anymore, I would still keep my money in Bitcoin because it's convenient. It's like it cannot be confiscated. I have full control, full ownership of my money. So it's a very good tool to store wealth. So that's the primary use case that can work right now, because you don't need to have a scalable infrastructure to do that, because you don't need to do a lot of transactions to store wealth. You just need like a few transactions per year, and you can use it with this for this scope. And people did it for years now. But yeah, eventually, if it's going to be sustainable, it also has to have a solid transaction volume, because right now Bitcoin is the mining is financed by the new coins that are issued, but this won't be the case for forever. So like I'm not talking about the end of the money reward in general, but also when the money reward will be significantly lower than this. So just 10 years from now, in other couple of halvings, the money rewards will be very very low. So we need the transaction fees to take the role of financing the Bitcoin security. So we need more people doing transactions. So we need more people using Bitcoin as a of payment. And yeah, we're seeing this is happening with people that have no alternative. So people that want to pay somebody that is the platform from PayPal, or people that want to do international payments with somebody in Iran, for example, that is bound from an international banking system. And we need this to grow to be sustainable. So people may see see Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. They are not wrong, because it has to be to be successful. But the thing is that there is some effort that has to be done on the infrastructure level to make this sustainable and scalable. So solutions like Lightning Network are absolutely necessary, because we cannot have everything on chain, because there are some trade-off that we have to deal with. If we have too many transactions on chain, then it becomes too expensive to validate transactions. So for less people can actually participate in the system. So yeah, primary use cases, store of value, but also minimum exchange is absolutely necessary for Bitcoin to be successful in the long term.
Okay. Moving on to the second topic, which is Chainside. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Chainside, the work you guys are doing there. What service are you guys providing? And are your client, if your client are mainly in Italy, or you have European client, or people in other countries, and what's in the pipeline? What's the next big things coming out?
Yeah, so with Chainside, what we are providing is a payment processor service for Bitcoin payments. So basically, you're sending any kind of good or service. You're a generic merchant, and you want to accept Bitcoin payments for whatever reason. Basically, you just want to provide an extra payment option for your customers. But the problem is you probably don't want to handle the whole Bitcoin infrastructure on your own. So you want to use something that can abstract the complexity of Bitcoin and make it for you as simple as possible. And so this is something that existed for a while. Services like BitPay offer this kind of service. So what we're trying to do is to find a good equilibrium between make it as simple as possible, but not making it not introducing too much trust into it. So a service like BitPay, for example, you can accept Bitcoin, but then they have control of your Bitcoin, so it's a fiduciary system. While we have a system where we just manage the transaction monitoring. So we explore APIs, so you can see when the transaction is paid and when you can actually consider the payment as confirmed and you can release the service. But then the Bitcoin will go directly to your personal wallet. It doesn't even need to be online, because we just put your public key, and then we can generate addresses for you. And in this way, we have a good trade-off between simplicity of integration and the trustlessness of the system. So we don't actually keep the funds of the merchants. So later, the next step will also to introduce the instant exchange service. So the idea is some people want to accept Bitcoin payments because it's an extra payment option for their customers, but still they don't want to keep the Bitcoins because maybe they don't care, they don't want to, maybe they want to do it as a private individual, not with their company, so they don't want the company to be exposed to Bitcoin volatility or to deal with Bitcoin in accounting. And so they just want to exchange the Bitcoins automatically in euros. And I think now we are integrating that into our system. It's just mostly a legal problem now that we are solving with our lawyers, and it will actually work in the whole European area, so where the whole SEPA area, it would be accessible. And I think that many people criticize this kind of services because they say that it's a way to dump Bitcoin, because I make a Bitcoin payments, but the counterparty, the merchant, is actually selling them on the market right away, so it's not good for Bitcoin. But still, I think it's good to create a healthy Bitcoin ecosystem. So if I have places where I can spend my Bitcoins, even if they don't keep them, it still grows the value of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange in general, because there are more places where I can use Bitcoin, so it increases the utility of Bitcoin. So yeah, it's true that it could create price pressure because there are many merchants that keep selling Bitcoin on the market. But I think for the ecosystem in general, it's good because it increases the utility of Bitcoin. So eventually, it will also increase the price.
Okay, so is your client mainly merchants, right?
Yes, yes, and right now mostly Italians, but because we are in Italy. But if you want to, our service can work like anywhere in the world. If you want to keep Bitcoin, and anywhere in Europe if you want to exchange in euros.
And he's more like online, based business, or you also have brick and mortar physical businesses?
Well, it's mostly online right now for a reason, because with Bitcoin right now you have this latency that you have to wait for at least one confirmation to be fairly sure that the payment will be finalized. And this is acceptable for e-commerces, because okay, if I am delivering a package to my client, and I have a service that like an e-commerce that I sell goods, and I ship them to my clients, even if I have to wait 30 minutes for a confirmation, that delay is not a problem, because I'm going to ship at the end of the day anyway. But for brick and mortar, the transaction is to be instant. So I pay, I receive the good. So this latency is a problem. This will be solved by system like Lightning Network that don't have this kind of problem. So like eventually also brick and mortar will be sustainable without security risk, because now many brick and mortar, they just accept Bitcoin with the zero confirmations, which in some cases it can be okay. It depends on the nature of your business. So if you're like a pub, you sell beers, and you sell beers in Bitcoins mostly to Bitcoin meetups. It's not really a problem, because you don't really have a problem of trust. So yeah, maybe you even lose the value proposition of Bitcoin. But 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 yeah. So right now, I think Bitcoin is secure and sustainable. So the speed is good enough for e-commerce and online-based businesses. But yeah, eventually, maybe already in the next year, the technology will be good enough that also for brick and mortar we will have a secure instant transaction.
Has anybody of your client tested or try, even in production, some Lightning Network implementation right now?
Oh no, currently we just offer on-chain payments. We are working with Lightning, but the problem with Lightning from our perspective is that right now you have two options. First option, you make it trustless, so the merchant doesn't have to trust you, but the merchant needs to have a working Lightning node, and that is not realistic, because Lightning node is even more complicated than Bitcoin. He has to always be online. He has to have the liquidity to have income capacity to receive payments. Many things can go wrong. And the other option is that that's what other payment processors doing, that we become custodian, so we accept Lightning payments on our node, and then later we give the Bitcoins to the merchant. So we became a middleman. And we don't really like that option very much. So right now, while we try to work on something that can be a good compromise. So we just offer on-chain payments.
Last question on this topic is your merchant, the merchant you work with, is anyone just quoting on Bitcoin and not using fiat for quoting, or everything is both Bitcoin and other currency at the moment?
No, yeah, all of them, they also, this Bitcoin and other currency. So it's one merchant that want to add a new payment option for their customers.
Yeah, I was considering that because, for the time being, as we have the you have to convert to fiat currency. You're going to have this volatility issue, and actually the question that lead to that, is anyone concerned about volatility in Bitcoin, and is there a way to manage that at this moment?
Well, some of our merchants are not concerned because the volume that they have on Bitcoin is not relevant for the size of their business. So they are okay with being exposed to with the volatility. So some of them, they are actually keeping the Bitcoins, which is good. But yeah, the only way to manage volatility, if you're a merchant right now, is to either sell them right away or find some arbitrage systems. And I think this problem will not be solved until Bitcoin price become more stable in general, and this will happen when Bitcoin matures. So when Bitcoin is big enough, the volatility will gradually go down, which is something that is already happening. We may feel that Bitcoin is volatile, but compared to 5 years ago,
it's definitely reduced the volatility significantly.
So it's something that will naturally happen over time. So yeah, maybe right now it's not great for merchants to deal with this kind of volatility, but yeah, I'm confident that in the next years or maybe more, but eventually Bitcoin price will be stable enough for merchants to be acceptable.
Okay, thanks. In terms of like technical challenge and the day-to-day, what do you think is the most reoccurring problems that you see with your clients, and how are you guys coping with that?
Well, we don't. Yeah, some of them they ask us support to manage their wallet, because it's actually we are currently not offering walleting services, even if we are planning to do it in the future. So our merchant use other parties' wallet like Electrum or Ledger or whatever. So maybe they are not super. Sometimes they are not super experienced because they just want to accept Bitcoin. They don't want to necessarily to learn everything about it. So yeah, I think the main technical challenge is supporting them to manage their Bitcoin funds safely.
Is there any common questions that they ask you repeatedly that they just have trouble to grasp? And maybe you can share any funny moment, any questions that didn't make much sense.
Yeah, most of the questions are regarding the prices. So sometimes they say they are happy because the price went up and now they have more money. Now they are complaining that the price went down. so yeah.
They're never happy.
But yeah.
It's like when Bitcoin got stuck at 6,000 for quite a while, and there was the lowest volatility. So people were like, Bitcoin is not moving. I was like, well, a few months ago, a few weeks ago, you were like, it's too much volatility, so you're never happy. It's
Bitcoin is not going up. Is blocked. The price is is blocked. That they say, oh, the price is moving too fast. So yeah, it's never okay.
It seems like there is this common thread to find something negative about Bitcoin is the mining. I actually did a meetup on that. Well, you were actually a guest on that meetup about Bitcoin mining being a threat to the planet, which is just funny to mention. But yeah, every day there is a new one that we have to fight.
It's fun.
Okay, just moving on to the next. You want to talk a little bit? We spoke about Blockstream and Lightning. So in terms of business opportunity, so which is the next section. Do you think we are going to see a valid Bitcoin on-chain scaling proposal being implemented at this point, like a significant upgrade to the current version of the protocol? Or this version for you, from your own opinion, will remain stable, obviously excluding bug fixes, for a while, and we're going to see application built on top? We already see some. Do you think that will continue and main Bitcoin protocol will remain this version except bug fixes, or you think we're going to see some major change on the main Bitcoin protocol?
Well, I think like in the relatively short time, so in the next year, we will already see some significant change. In particular, I'm thinking about the implementation of Schnorr signatures, which is actually an on-chain scaling solution because it reduced the size of the signature, so it's each transaction use less on-chain space, so we can have more transaction on-chain. And apart from that, we will also stuff to optimize to reduce the on-chain space used by smart contracts. So solutions like Mast or Taproot, they actually try to for smart contracts that have multiple spending conditions. Now you have to put on chain all the possible spending conditions, even if you are using only one of them. So ideally, with this proposal, you will only put on chain the spending condition that you are using. So you reduce the size of the transaction itself. So it's another on-chain scaling solution. Yeah, I see many. There are still many things that can be done that are feasible to be implemented. So I believe that in the next 2 or 3 years we will still see some improvement on the blockchain level of Bitcoin on the layer one. But yeah, eventually the protocol has to become stable. So maybe in 5 or 10 years we will have this protocol that is set in stone, and we will only have bug fixes or marginal optimization. And yeah, I hope we will get to the point as soon as possible, because it is so at least we get rid of all the drama about how to change Bitcoin. We get to the point that we don't change Bitcoin, we just build on top of it, and we're fine.
Yeah, when I have an interview with Giacomo, we agree on the fact that there is some similarity with in terms of the evolution with TCP/IP, where at some point TCP/IP, whatever is the version now, stopped back in the 2000 or whatever, and then from that point on, you see application built on top of it. And Giacomo was explaining, and I agree with him with this view, that at some point the protocol will ossify and you're going to continue to see application built on top, but the actual main protocol will not change. It's interesting, your point about privacy, integrating privacy in Bitcoin, stronger privacy with Schnorr, which I haven't thought about. I heard when I was in Riga from Adam talking about that also in the last presentation. From Mario from Blockstream, he mentioned about Schnorr, but I never thought, I didn't thought about the fact that will be a significant upgrade to the current version. So good point there. So actually, moving to sidechain, Federico, the pegs we briefly touched upon at the beginning, and Lightning. Do you see? Obviously, there are many opportunities that are opening up to integrate traditional finance with Bitcoin technology, thanks to this and many other projects and other sidechain projects as well, because there is not only Federico the Peg, there are other kind of sidechains. What do you see as the main opportunities, and more importantly, the issue for people that would like to join this opportunity and kind of build based on this new technology available on top of Bitcoin? What do you see as the main challenges and maybe some opportunities that you want to share?
Well, I think like federated sidechains like Liquid, they are very useful for some kind of applications. but they, for example, Liquid is very good to move liquidity between exchanges. So let's say I have Bitcoins on Bitstamp and I want to move these Bitcoins on Kraken. And so the starting point is a trusted environment, an exchange, and the receiving point is another trusted environment. So it doesn't really make sense to use this trustless layer in between, which is the blockchain, and it's quite expensive and slow. So it actually makes sense to use something that has some trust involved, like a federated sidechain, to move money between exchanges. But apart from that, thing is many things that most of the thing you build on top of Bitcoin, you build it because Bitcoin is trustless. You don't have to trust anyone. While with a federated sidechain, you introduce some layer of trust, which reduce the range of possible useful application that you can build. So yeah, you gain in efficiency, but you lose in security, which is the main value proposition of Bitcoin. On the other hand, we have the trustless sidechains, which are still theoretically, unfortunately, and I'm not sure we will ever see a real trustless sidechain working in production. But if it ever happens, it will be great to experiment. So let's say you want to experiment a new protocol, something like that has privacy, like Monero, but you don't want to create a new coin that require people to invest in something to make it valuable. And so yeah, you can experiment on a side chain and still use Bitcoin as a unit of account, which would be great. But I still see trusted sidechain very far away if they will ever arrive. While federated sidechain like Liquid are good for some narrow use cases, like moving liquidity between exchanges, or the other application that they built right now is to issue generic token on top of the sidechain, which still makes sense because an asset that is not a native asset on the blockchain has some level of trust intrinsically because you have an issuer, so you already have to trust someone. So if you introduce a little bit of extra trust on the transaction validation side, it can still be acceptable. But yeah, I think federated sidechain have a narrow use cases and trustless sidechains they are still far away.
I see. And you're concerned of being about the sidechain being relying on trust or let's call it functionaries
Yeah.
based on Liquid nomenclature. Are you concerned, even though the final balance will need to be settled in the main chain, meaning that at the end of the day, I see it, and maybe I see it incorrectly, as basically a multi-signature structure where the functionaries have signatory power over balance on main chain. So if you look at that way, it's not really similar to an altcoin where the overall protocol is based on a trust model. Is just the signature part of it, which rely on parties having to agree on what transaction was legitimate.
No, yeah, the problem is mostly on the also on the peg side. So the idea is I move money, I move bitcoins from the main chain to the side chain. And what happened that basically my bitcoins are kept on this multi-sig between all the participants of the federated sidechain or the validators, and basically I'm trusting this multi-sig to hold my bitcoins and to move them out of the multi-sig when I try to redeem them or somebody else try to redeem them based on what happened on the sidechain. So I think okay can be acceptable for some use cases, but still you are trusting this group of people, which you may be okay to trust it, but yeah, it limits the range of application that you can build because for many applications, the trust is not acceptable.
Yeah, no, I absolutely see your point. I think it's interesting the fact that traditional finance and traditional, institutions that have not been exposed to Bitcoin, not only because of the volatility, but also because of the complexity and the lack of requirements that they need in order to continue with the day-to-day operation. So this model help these traditional finance institutions, give the opportunity to traditional finance institution to get exposed to Bitcoin, and I find that use case to be quite interesting. So let's see how it's going to play out. But I found that to be something to keep taking a closer look and see how it's going to evolve, because it sounds pretty interesting at the moment. Moving on to the next question, the future of smart contract for Bitcoin. You talk a lot about, also in the last meetup, about building smart contracts on Bitcoin. Now, how would that, give us your view on how would that work? And also the second part of the question is, does Ethereum still has a chance maybe for a more complex contract structure where more expressivity is required, where Bitcoin maybe is too rigid and doesn't allow the level of expressivity? Or you think, also looking at the last performance of Ethereum, there is not much left there for smart contracts?
So yeah, I think so. First of all, many people can ignore this, but Bitcoin actually has smart contract capabilities. You cannot do everything you can do with Ethereum, but it's good because if you limit the expressivity, you improve the security, and it's less likely that people make mistakes. So it was like intended to be limited. And yeah, there are a lot of things that you can actually do. So yeah, in the last meetup, I did some example like heritage wallets or the corporate wallet where a corporation store a large amount of Bitcoin on a complex smart contract that has multiple spending conditions. So there is some stuff you can build. Lightning Network itself is built using Bitcoin smart contracts. And I see that the expressivity of Bitcoin could improve in the future thanks to things like simplicity. Simplicity is a new scripting language that is being proposed by a blockstream researcher, and that could improve the stuff that you can do with Bitcoin without compromising the security. So it's still far away, but maybe if we see that implemented in a couple of years or maybe more, it would be great for improve the stuff that you can do with Bitcoin smart contracts. Regarding Ethereum, I think the problem with Ethereum is that it's kind of the bad design choices are so bad that it's difficult to recover. So right now the few people are actually using Ethereum for smart contracts. So the dApps users are very low, like few thousands at most. But still the blockchain size is growing so fast. So now a full archive node on Ethereum is over a terabyte, and you need some quite expensive hardware to be able to synchronize a node. So most people actually use third-party APIs. Most developers on Ethereum use third-party APIs, which introduce a lot of trust in most of the applications built on top of Ethereum, which is bad for something that its sole value proposition is to be trustless. So I think that Ethereum really struggles with scalability, and all the proposals that been made kind of faded away, or they didn't manage to be implemented. And I don't see anything that in the short term will fix the situation. So the time is running out because now if the blockchain size grows too fast, then it will be impossible for new users to sync with the blockchain. So I think that Ethereum situation is quite bad, and also the fact that there are a lot of competing altcoins that kind of offer the same value proposition. It's not good for the Ethereum ecosystem in general, because then it's bad on the price, and if the price goes down, you lose security. So it could be become victim of attacks, so things can go very badly. I think the problem is that the network effect on Ethereum is not as strong as on Bitcoin, because the value proposition of Bitcoin is to be money, and money have a very good network effect. The value proposition of Ethereum is to be world computer, whatever that means, and you can easily build a new world computer like all these new altcoins that are coming out and offer kind of the same service, and maybe with something a little bit different. So yeah, I don't think like Ethereum will be sustainable in the long run.
And I'm glad that you're supporting those arguments, because every time you're in London, it's just myself explaining to people. Like, I have people discussing, what about repo, what about Ethereum, and I give my view. And there are not many Bitcoiners, so it seems like I'm one-sided. But the good things about this interview, that people can actually see other people's perspective. I don't know if you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist, so maybe it doesn't apply. You having a different perspective, but
I never call myself a Bitcoin maximalist, but other people do so. So yeah, I guess.
I think we're on the same exact line. Meaning, I never label myself one, but I definitely have more things in common with maximalists than none. Anyway, moving to the next. I think I want to ask you a question that back to about Chainside. Because you mentioned about Italy and the situation in Italy. How is the environment right now for Bitcoin in Italy overall? There is a friendly or hostile or neutral perception toward Bitcoin, and are people interested? What's the situation?
Well, some people are interested, but most people still don't know much about Bitcoin. Because, it's not big enough for every normal people to dedicate part of their life to understand Bitcoin, which is still quite complex and still not relevant enough. But I think that's the case of most countries. From the media perspective, and sometimes there is good coverage, sometimes there is bad coverage. It's not really that different from the rest of the world. From a government perspective, currently, so far has been mostly neutral. Nothing really bad came out of the government so far. There is a law proposal that a pending law proposal that could be bad for merchants that accept Bitcoin payments, because it may require them to do QAC. But probably won't pass, also because now they just started this blockchain expert advisory board to help the government to manage this kind of law of regulation. And many people that actually work in the industry, including myself, are in this board. So we will try to help the government not to do too much damage. So I think that so far it's okay, and hopefully also in the future they won't do any bad regulation.
Cool. Okay. Next one. We're going to the personal questions. Your favorite top three. Starting from the first one, answering cold. Most important top three current Bitcoin product or services. You can use Casa, Liquid, any wallets, whatever you want. Top three.
Okay, so I really like the thing that Blockstream just released, the satellite APIs that let any developers to broadcast messages over satellite. So I'm not sure what will be the application that they will be on top of them, but I'm really interested to see how it evolves. Then from a wallet side, I really like Samurai Wallet, which is a very good. They try to be user friendly but implement a lot of privacy features. So I think it's very good. If many Bitcoin wallets follow their view to prioritize privacy. And on kind of the same topic, I really like the Gotenna implementation. So they've gotten these devices to broadcast Bitcoin transaction over a mesh network instead of using the internet itself. So it can be good to improve the network resilience and in general the censorship resistance of Bitcoin transactions. So yeah, I think if we see more people starting to adopt this kind of technology, can be good for the ecosystem in general.
And there is also TX10 or Textena, I don't know how you pronounce it, that you can run on.
It's implement the integration between
on
Bitcoin
Gotena Mesh.
and Gotena Mesh. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get mine for Christmas. Looking forward. I see a lot of Casa, node being.
I don't really see too much the point of Casa because for that price you can buy like a cheap computer that is able to be a Lightning node. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit more difficult to set up, but I don't really see the. I don't see a useful product.
I actually like the fact that I think the model. I don't know if there's different structure of signature, but there's one model where they hold one signature and you hold, I think, three. And in case you lose, one of your private key, you can still, recreate the unlocking signature by them providing that. So for people that are not tech savvy, and I've seen many that either make things too complicated and they forget how to recreate their private key, or maybe they were too loose and they lost it, or they got stolen, or things like that. That is a serious problem. So I like Casa for that reason, because it's kind of simplified for the normal guy, or the elder person that is not familiar with, as well as people that basically non-technical people in general.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, the top 3 coolest, not so relevant latest Bitcoin application. You can.
Yeah, maybe pretty much the same. Maybe one that is cool but not relevant that I enjoyed was Satoshi Place, where you can pay with Lightning to change a pixel on a web page, which was an interesting social experiment. Also, it was fun. Now I think it's not really used that much anymore, but yeah. Also, I try to experiment to try all those new Lightning related application like Yallas, where you can pay to read articles, or some gambling site where you can pay with Lightning. Those are the ones that I enjoy to play with the most.
There are still people paying for vanity address, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, vanity address, you can easily generate it on your own. So yeah, I don't see why people are still paying for that.
I find it very interesting. Okay, last question, and then I'll let you go. I must ask you this question before you go, for everything that happened on Twitter. With you and Giacomo talk about Litecoin. So, would Litecoin survive the crypto winter? And why you like Litecoin so much? And will you cry if Litecoin is delisted?
Okay, so I think that Litecoin may survive the crypto winter because for some reason people still believe that it's a decent coin, but actually I fail to understand why Litecoin is so successful, because it's just a copy of Bitcoin like many others. It has no added value proposition. They had many narrative shifts. At the beginning, it was it's digital silver, Bitcoin is digital gold, Litecoin is digital silver, but it doesn't really make sense, especially now that we have Lightning Network. Then at some point, they try to push for the narrative that the Litecoin is like a Bitcoin sidechain, thanks to atomic cross-chain atomic swap, which is totally not true because it has a different unit of account, so it cannot be a sidechain. Still, I can't explain why, but many people that still consider Litecoin as a legit currency, maybe because the Litecoin community is very close to the Bitcoin community for the thing that they value. But I don't know, it's just a copycat. So I feel eventually it will lose all of its value because it lacks of a sustainable value proposition. But in the next few years, probably it will still be alive, and maybe it will be one of the few altcoins that manage to survive this bear cycle.
Will you post a video of you crying when that happened?
Oh, I don't think so.
Thanks, Federico, for your time tonight. We're closing up. We had some issue at the beginning of the YouTube video due to the fact that YouTube changed on me the settings. They decided to deploy this new studio beta. It was kind of not intuitive. There are some of the functionality that are missing, the integration with Google Hangout specifically. But all in all, it was a pleasure to have you here at BitKnow channel. Hope to see you again soon. And before we go, below is the subscribe button. Subscribe. And if you're in London, join the Bitcoin and Blockchain London meetup.
Yeah. So thank you for the invitation, and see you next time.
Ciao, ciao.